It's green for go. They're racing. He says go. He says ta-da. And Tiger Tara rolls away from them on the home turn. Here comes another big boil over. Equine athleticism at its best. The king is in the castle once more. This is in one race. The rest are almost in another post. She is a star with a capital S. It's going to be a triple treat, a miracle three-peat. Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed history here at Menangle. What about that? It's getting right up on the sprint lane and it's going to bolt in.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Sprint Lane Podcast. Paul Cochrane with you. Look, we haven't gone international very often on this show, but we're about to. And because we're going international, I thought I'd better bring a friend along for the ride. So I've got Andrew Kelly from Harness Racing Australia, the CEO. Hello, mate.
Good to join you again.
You're becoming a regular on this show.
Yeah, it's fun, actually.
It's good to have you. You might actually be our most regular guest. If I went through and, geez, you'll end up on the payroll.
Well, you can check out the analytics on that and see whether or not people are actually listening to anything that I've got to say or if I'm adding value, but I'll let others be the judge of that. But for what it's worth, I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Look, well, that's great to hear. I hope the listeners do too. Obviously, as the CEO of Harness Racing Australia, we have really significant links. You know, you in your role have links with the States and that. But a key part of it is what we can do abroad and how we can interact with other countries, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. So there's an organisation called the International Trotting Association, and it has a formal conference every second year. This year I put forward a proposition to not drag it out necessarily, but for every third year. The economics of being able to move around the world is becoming increasingly difficult for a lot of countries, and there's 19 countries that are party to that particular membership or that agreement, and it's all based on your stud book. So we all have to have common rules and common agreements around registering horses and moving horses between countries, and then what we try and do is expand upon that, and we spend a lot of time in the area of not just the breeding but in also integrity, wagering and racing, and then marketing, and see what we can learn from each other on a regular basis and keep up to date. We've got to get better at it because there's no point just meeting every 3 years and going over what you did for the last 3 years. So part of the proposition was to meet more regularly, start some WhatsApp groups, and be able to keep in closer contact. But what we have been able to achieve outside of just that more formal structure is to develop relationships with France, with Scandinavia primarily via Sweden, with North America primarily via the USTA, but increasingly with Standardbred Canada, and ourselves to be able to work on probably the bigger picture around health and welfare, prohibited substances and drug control, and all importantly marketing, and being able to work out ways to get more people to come to the track and touch and feel. And we'll see some of that on Saturday night that we've stolen from or benchmarked ourselves against from other places around the world.
Fantastic. Well, you mentioned France. We've got with us, lady who's probably got the best job in the world.
Not far off it, I'll tell you. Yep.
Emmanuelle Morvillers. Hey, welcome to the show. So I said France. You're here as a guest from LeTrot. Can you tell us what your job actually is? What's your title? Tell us what your job actually is, because when Andrew and I were talking about it, I said, that's the best job in the world. It's to travel the place and go to the races. How good.
That's right.
So welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I think I have the best job. I am in charge of international, so it means a lot. It means we have signed partnership with 30 countries in the world, including Australia and USA and many countries in Europe. And I am also in charge to keep going with relations with the other countries, and in both sides, make people come to France to discover our industry and make French people discover other industries. We need to be all together if we want our sport to survive. We can't be alone, and we need to be all together and to defend our sport into the different governments and share our ideas to finance and to develop the sport.
And the best way to see our product, I guess, is being up close and personal. What a time. So we're recording this the day before the TAB Eureka, which is a special moment for us, particularly for Andrew as one of the masterminds of this event. What a great time to come and visit us at what we think's the best track in the world at Club Menangle. I can see how excited you are to be there and see some of the cream of the crop in our sport here in Australia.
Yeah, that's nice. We have regular links. We've been meeting each other for 10 years, something like that, with Australia, since I think the conference in Paris.
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we started to work together, and I was lucky to have many Australian people coming to discover France when they were in Europe. But that's my first time in Australia. So that was a very good opportunity to come and for this event.
You should tell the story about last night at the slot holders dinner that you came across some people that...
Yeah, I thought I would know nobody except Andrew. And then, Ellen, and I've met several people who already came to France, and in 2018, the other one in 2019. So that was fun to see them again.
And that's the beauty of sport and its power to network, isn't it? I mean, you've just come back from the World Conference. I mean, you would have contacts in all those countries that you sort of rattled off before that are important for us as a national body to be able to tap into.
I think it's also important for the bigger countries, and I include France in this as the biggest, to be able to assist and develop some of the smaller nations as well. So, for example, Emmanuelle and myself were at the Serbian derby, which was just the day before the conference started. And, it's a small track with no betting and a very, very passionate following, including a person who you know very well in terms of Nikola Jokic from the NBA. Yeah. But he's just one of 5,000 or 6,000 people on the track that day who is hoping his horse is going to win and then proud of his horse and enjoying and loving that moment of victory. And to see that and to think of ways that we can partner with them and develop with them over the next few years is just as important. But from Australia and France's perspective, I think we have found really common ground around breeding, and you'll see more and more French stallion bloodlines, and Pat Driscoll and others are to be thanked for being for bringing those bloodlines to Australia. I think the Trotter Francais is widely acknowledged as the toughest trotter in the world, and I say trotting because there's only trotting in Scandinavia and Europe. So it's a little bit foreign for Emmanuelle to be at breakfast with the stars this morning and seeing only paces.
I was going to ask you that. Like, do you think, because that's a question that my friends who aren't necessarily involved in the sport say, and I say, well, trotting's number one in Europe. And they say, well, why? And I can't really give the answer to that. Why do you think that is?
I think yesterday I had to answer this question many times because that's always a question that Australian people ask me. That's history. We don't have breed for pacing. Our horses are trotters. Yeah. And with the selection of the breed, there are more and more trotters. Their natural gait is trotting. It's very difficult to make them gallop. I was very surprised this morning looking at the pacers galloping to train. It could not. We can't see that in France. They are trotters, and we never had pacers in Europe, except in Ireland, probably because they told me that it was between Australia and United States. The stop was Ireland and Great Britain. That's why they started with pacers too. But in all the rest of Europe, we don't have this breed. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay. Do you think there is the potential for pacing to embed into Europe at any point?
No.
Andrew's shaking his head at the same time.
No, there's no chance. It's simply not going to happen.
Yeah. It would be to create a new breed, new horses, to build everything from the start. And I think that's, for me, pacers are a bit more like thoroughbred in the meaning they race very fast, short distance, shorter than our distances with trotters. And I've spoken with US trainers and Australian trainers who train both, and they say that the hand of the trainer, his ability, has more impact in the trotters than in the pacer. So you just don't need to buy the most expensive horse, the fastest horse to win. And our races are longer distance, so it's more strategic. I mean, when you have 2,700 meters, It's like
But also many more horses in the race. Your field sizes are quite
Yeah.
quite large in comparison. So it's hard
yeah,
to it's hard to
15,
line up.
16 horses per race.
Yeah. Okay, so first time in Australia, first time out at the track at Menangle. What's your impressions? We're very proud of it. We think it's a great facility.
Yeah,
What did you
that's a
think?
great facility,
Yeah.
for sure. It's very nice, very comfortable for the horses, for the professional people, probably for the public. I will see that tomorrow. But the track is nice. Everything is very well built. And I had a chance, Andrew took me to the training center this morning. And it's the same, very comfortable for horses, for people. You feel the welfare wish towards the horses.
It's a wonderful facility. Yeah.
And I just received a message from Lauren Shane Triton.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she saw me on my Instagram and she said, "Oh, I was training there before I left to US."
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lauren Tritton, who's
Friend of the show.
taking everything
Friend
in
of the
her taking everything in her stride over there in the US, and in fact, you leave next week to head to the Yonkers International Trot. So you'll leave Wednesday to be in Yonkers next Saturday, and of course, Aldebaran Zeus will be racing there, representing Australia as well. And I think Just Believe did a very good job in Sweden, and hopefully many people overseas are starting to think about Australian trotters in a different way. And
That's also a part of my job when you talk that. Every week we have created an international press review, so we translate many information about races abroad to our French people, so they know more about what's going on around the world. So we're talking more and more about Australia because there are always many news, many news and many new information. And they have some French blood, they have good races, some horses start to travel to Europe, like Just Believe, and we really want to have in the next future her horse coming for Prix d'Amérique.
What do you think?
wow, so hang on, this is actually
All right.
this is big news.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an exclusive.
Pick her up on this.
I know you've said before to me that you were keen to see if maybe some trainers would bring some horses for the winter races, which is actually a season. And I think the average prize money for those races across that season is about €50,000.
54,000 euro per race.
Yeah, so we're talking like almost 100,000 Aussie every race over a long period of time. And I thought, well, that might be a nice carrot. Maybe there might be a few trainers here that were interested in heading over there, and if they could stable at Grebois and be very comfortable and be around some of the greats. You know, you've got Jean-Michel Bazare there. Obviously, Goop has a space there as well. But to hear Emmanuelle talk about a possibility of running in the Prix d'Amérique, that's big time. One thing that we have to think about with that potential is that it's only for entiers, so it's only for stallions and female horses. So
No gelding.
no geldings.
Forward planning.
Yeah.
Planning. So we talked about Just Believe. I'm interested. What was the international response to an Australian horse going and competing in that? And obviously, luck wasn't quite on Just Believe's side in the big race, but
many people didn't know that trotting is now so strong in Australia. They know that there is pacing, but most of them didn't know that trotting is growing. I think trotting is still growing in Australia. Sorry. And so they were surprised to see the Just Believe arriving for the big race in Sweden. He was very unlucky on that day. But
the Italians.
Yeah, it happened to us in New York last year. We had the same thing in New York last year with the French one. But after that, he did very well in the next races. So that's exciting. I mean, that's an international sport. So in basketball, in football, in everything, you have some international meetings with the big teams. So that's very nice to have some competition like that. And next Saturday in New York, you will have a French horse, an Australian horse, American horses. That's good.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So when at the top of the show, I said she's got the best job on the planet, and I'm basing that on Andrew's given me a run through on some of your travel that you've done of late. So just give me a snapshot of what the last few weeks has looked like. We've gone from there to there to there. The Caribbean, I heard, dropped in.
For example, I think, In 4 days, I was in Sweden, and the day after in Serbia, the day after in Italy, and on the Wednesday I was in Belgium.
Bad, eh?
But Europe is small. I mean,
I
for
know.
me, it's like,
I know,
changing town in Australia.
Yeah, but it's still a charm to it for us Australians who've got to,
Yeah, it's amazing,
and quite often the world to get there.
And quite often I find it interesting that our sport is sometimes a bit different in terms of the way that the fans look or the participants look at their administrator. So it might be like, oh, what are they going over there for? What are you going to learn about? Why are we spending this money? Or what's the value proposition at the end of the day? But it is actually enormous, and it is great to have these links and these opportunities that then present themselves and make life easier for our industry that might want to go there, and from any internationals that want to come here and establish those links to make it work easy and not be hard work for people. And of course, we're learning all the time. I think about the AFL and their executives that when they go to Harvard Business School, behind that it's really supported and people congratulate them for doing it. It's almost like the reverse in Australia. We want to cut people down. It's like, what are they doing that for? And you should be accountable and you should be transparent about what you're doing and why you're doing it. But our efforts are all to improve our sport. And it's a long way to go, so you have to make the most of it while you're there, because you can't just get on a train and go from the Netherlands to Belgium, in an afternoon. Yeah. So you have to make the most of it, and you have to make it worth your while, because in Europe, you're meeting with people every second week, essentially. You're the heads of LeTrot, Guillaume Mopo, and Benoit would be, meeting with their counterparts almost weekly to keep developing strategies, and the Masters and the UET series and drivers championships and all these things that just happen, but so when we get the opportunity, we have to make the most of it, and we have to be batting in there. We have now really important for our market is the French trotting races that come into Australia, and that's increasing every year. Unfortunately, we dropped off with some changes that were made in the PMU with their structures. We were sending 4 races a week to France. And to give your listeners some insight into that, there was more betting in France on those 4 races than the entire race meeting by the 3 pools in Australia on the same night. And that was on a Monday night, right? Yeah. Which was going into France on a Monday morning. So people were heading for morning tea with a cigarette and an espresso in the tabac. And it's largely retail market over there. Cash is still bigger than the online market. And it was really popular. But things changed there that were out of our control, but with Tabcorp and the PMU getting their commingling and pooling together, and the testing of that's in its very late stages, we hope that we'll be able to offer that again in some way. But in Sweden, your listeners might be interested to know that there was quite a bit of controversy over there when they looked at maybe bringing in our pacing races. But we were able to prove that with the number of paces that we have and our injury and incident reports, and that tying a horse's legs together, which is how it's looked at overseas, isn't it? It's like, how can you tie a horse's legs together? That's how it's viewed. Was no better or worse than the injuries and incidents that might happen from a welfare perspective in the trotting. So I don't think that we will ever have pacing races broadcast into France, but we continue to absorb your product, which is really important for us, because that's growing our pie down here as well. But what I do hope is that we'll be able to find a way to have more Australian races on your calendar into the future. And I know that Emmanuelle is always talking with counterparts, Blondine at the PMU and Emmerich, in order to get our get us back on the screens there.
And visits like this and networking and engagement opportunities like this are only going to enhance that. I'm intrigued. Like, so Andrew mentioned those 4 races in the betting turnover. Is that a sign that, okay, we don't get a lot of it, but we respect it? Is that
of course.
The way it's viewed?
Exactly.
We respect your product, even though we don't actually get a great deal of it, but we think it's pretty good.
Yes, that's exactly the point. The fact was that we have many races in France already. We have 11,000 races a year, so we have very few spots for foreign races. but we have some, and with the time delay between France and Australia, it was quite easy to work together. Because of after COVID and issues about perhaps too many races for the pointers, or the amount decreased, so they are still looking on. But for sure, as soon as we can find an opportunity, we'll do that, because in fact the races in Australia are very good. I mean, there is no point about that. So that's just, we have to teach a bit our pointers because of some rules that could be very different, even if we try to have some international rules all over the world. But yes, we respect definitely the product, the integrity, the doping system control, and everything.
That's good to hear. We like
Yeah,
those.
I think they are much better than we are about welfare issues.
Yeah, we do. There's no doubt at the last conference, I think we lead the way in many respects, and we should be really proud of that. But from a drug control perspective, I think ourselves and the French probably do the best job with regard to not only the systems that are in place, but the efforts behind the scenes and the laboratories and all that type of work as well. But it's there's some similarities, and then there's some like very big differences between our organisations as well. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to talk about why that's the case, because you ask yourself some questions that you never get asked before when well, why do you do that, and how is this the case? And some of the things that happen in France, which might be interesting, particularly on a breeding side, is that and not every horse that's born a French trotteur is allowed to race. So just because you're born doesn't mean that you have the right to race. And similarly, the way that you build the stallion book is that it's based on performance. So the more services you can have is the better is determined by your performance on the track. So some of this is totally foreign to us and blows our minds, but it's just commonplace.
And have you looked at some of that and thought they're things that we should potentially be looking to implement here?
Probably not. We brought in a stallion limit a few years ago, which again in its time was reasonably controversial, but like it's pretty high at 150.
Yep.
It's I don't know, what are you, 125 at the maximum or 100 at the maximum?
100 at maximum, and we have more than 9,000 fallings a year.
Yeah. So there's many horses that don't get to the track in France, and we have a big rehoming program, and I know that the French are really interested in learning more about the rehoming program. But to say right from the word go, no, you're not in. It's pretty hard.
The first goal of our organization, we are a non-profit organization. The first sentence is organize racing to improve the breed. So we organize racing to select the best mares and the best stallions. Okay. That's the way. So we have like qualification races at 2 or 3 years old. It's like a race. They have to do 2,000 meters on a certain limit of time. And if they can't do that, they can repeat. But if they can't, they won't be able to race.
Okay. Well, Andrew, it's fascinating to have Emmanuelle here to give us an insight into, I know you've experienced it, but a lot of our listeners wouldn't have been exposed to what the European product looks like. I'm always conscious of time. If someone's got a coffee in front of them, I'm worried that the coffee might go a little bit cold, but Emmanuelle's sitting here with a black coffee with ice cubes in it, which doesn't really give me a sense of how long we've been talking.
No, true enough. Actually, you had a nice trip over to Manly the other. You might have picked up a little bit of a cough on the way back, but it was a great way to see Sydney.
Oh yes, that was one of the
beautiful city, isn't it? Yeah.
Best way to start the day yesterday.
So you're allowed to, I mean, I know you're here on business, but you're allowed to play Tommy Tourist just for a little bit. What are the things you have to see while you're in Australia in your mind?
Well, in 1 week, that's impossible. Because, Australia is like a dream for French European people. Yeah. All the young people, they want to come and stay 1 year in Australia and discover everything. So that's good. Harbour was nice to see in Sydney.
Yeah.
The opera. So next time I want to go for a real opera in Sydney because that's worldwide famous. But perhaps if I can meet with a kangaroo, it would be nice. but I'm not sure I want like all your snails.
Yeah, no.
No.
Snakes are a bit foreign, but how about at the barrier reveal you managed to tick off a few things just from the balcony? Because
Yeah.
what an outstanding venue
Opera
it was.
House, Sydney Harbour Bridge, all there right in front of you. Yeah, fantastic view.
Yeah.
Circular
It was
Quay
my
Ferry,
first step.
Manly
in-
Ferry.
First step in Australia.
Yeah.
I was just landed 1 hour before, and I arrived there, and it was like a postcard.
So you mentioned your Instagram. I bet it's full of these beautiful photos now of Sydney Harbour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
beautiful. That's what we'd like to hear. And she'll be able to, I reckon she'll be listening to Birds of Tokyo on the plane on her Spotify on the way home, Andrew.
Yeah, no doubt. But we've still got a bit to go. Paul James down in Ballarat's going to look after you for a few days, and I know that you're very familiar with Pat Driscoll and see his farm in live before heading off next Wednesday. So you've still got a bit to pack in.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic to have you here. You're welcome anytime, particularly on our racetracks, and we love to hear your experience, and obviously we're very keen for you to expose you to our product because we want to sell the dream of Australian racing and have it embed into the European product as much as possible, and expose people to our racing product because we're firm believers in how good it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful to have you here. Enjoy your stay. As we said, we're recording this tonight before the TAB Eureka, so you're here at a good time. You're going to see the world's richest race, which is a tagline we're very proud to be able to say, and can't wait for you to see how it all unfolds tomorrow night because it's going to be fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Pat him on the back at the end of it.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Thanks.
It's been a team effort. I keep saying it because it is.
Fantastic to have you here, Emmanuelle. Enjoy. Your coffee's nearly done, so and the ice cubes haven't quite melted. So
Time to refill.
yeah, time for a refill. Time for us to go. Thanks for listening to this special episode of the Sprint Lane podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this fascinating chat of how Australia's international relations link up with what's happening in France. We'll catch you next time on the Sprint Lane. Bye-bye.